Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is May 4th, 2026. I'm glad you're here. Let's get into what matters this week. There is a word that keeps showing up when you talk to furniture professionals right now, and that word is hesitation. Not panic, not collapse, just hesitation. That quiet, frustrating pause between a customer who clearly wants something and a customer who actually buys it. High Point Market was a good example of that dynamic playing out in real time. Showrooms were busy, product looked strong, conversations had energy, and then everyone flew home and returned to the same pattern they left behind. Consumers like things, they just don't pull the trigger. And understanding why that's happening and what to do about it is really the central story in furniture right now. Here's what the backdrop looks like. Interest rates have stayed elevated long enough to reshape how consumers think about big discretionary purchases. The housing market is not frozen, but it is slow, with fewer transactions and fewer of the life events that typically push people toward buying furniture. Consumer confidence is hovering, not crashing, but hovering. Gas and grocery prices stay high enough to create low-grade financial anxiety. Layer in geopolitical tension, and what you get is not fear, it's just hesitation, a lot of it. The Conference Board released its consumer confidence data for April, and the headline number came in at 92.8, up slightly from 92.2 in March. That is not a recovery signal, that is a hold. The Expectations Index, which tracks how consumers feel about their financial situation 6 months out, rose slightly to 72.2. But the write-in responses, where consumers explain their thinking in their own words, skewed pessimistic. They mentioned prices, oil and gas, and war more frequently than they did in March. Here's the piece that matters most for furniture specifically. Among all the big-ticket categories, furniture remains the top expected purchase for consumers who say they plan to buy something significant in the next 6 months. That's encouraging. It means the desire is there. The problem is converting that intention into an actual transaction. And that is the work in front of the industry right now.
Ray Allegrezza, who has covered this industry for decades, put it well after this year's High Point Market. Today's consumer doesn't lack the ability to purchase furniture, they lack the justification for it. The traditional triggers, moving to a new home, getting married, having a child, are showing up less frequently. Without those triggers, consumers are left trying to self-authorize a big discretionary spend, while the world quietly tells them to be careful. So they don't say no, they say later. And later, of course, has no deadline. The retail real estate picture adds another layer of context. CoStar Group released new data showing that U.S. retail vacancy is expected to peak in the mid-4.4% range before stabilizing and gradually tightening in 2027. Net absorption, which measures how much space is being filled versus vacated, is expected to average between 4 and 5 million square feet per quarter through the first half of 2026. Move-outs rose in the first quarter, driven partly by a higher closure rate among independent retailers. For furniture operators, this is actually a window that doesn't get enough attention. Vacancy near its peak means landlord leverage is near its lowest point in the cycle. If you have lease renewals or expansion conversations coming up in the next 12 months, now is the time to have them, not when the market tightens. That moment is coming, but it is not here yet. Now let's talk about something concrete and real: IEEPA tariff refunds. The Supreme Court overturned the Trump administration's IEEPA tariffs back in February, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection has been working through the refund process ever since. CBP launched its new CAPE system, that stands for Consolidated Administration and Processing of Entries, inside its ACE portal to handle these refunds at scale. Customs has moved largely away from issuing checks. The portal is the mechanism now.
The Home Furnishings Association held a webinar on April 30th to help importers and retailers understand where they stand. The single most important clarification: only importers of record are eligible to receive refunds directly. If you are a retailer who paid higher prices or absorbed surcharges but were not the importer of record, there is no court ruling that will send you a check. That path runs through your supplier relationships. It's a business conversation, not a legal one. And according to HFA CEO Peter Theron, that conversation should begin now, because the money is already flowing, and the window to negotiate a share of it is narrowing. For importers of record, the ACE portal is not negotiable. Steve Fodor, who has more than 30 years of experience in customs brokerage, was direct in the webinar. If you don't approach the ACE portal correctly, you will leave money on the table. Customs processes a high volume of entries and will not walk you through it. His advice: make it as easy as possible for customs to say yes. Submit information that is organized, accurate, and focused specifically on entries that carried IEEPA tariffs. The appeal deadline on lower court rulings is June 6th, but FODAR noted that refunds actively processing a reversal is unlikely. The broader takeaway on tariffs is this: the refund opportunity is real, but it is not passive. It rewards precision, speed, and clean documentation. The businesses that wait to get organized are the ones who will wonder later why their competitors had a better quarter. Let's shift to something that requires urgency in a different way. Amazon just moved Prime Day from its traditional mid-July slot to unspecified dates in June. That's roughly a month earlier than usual. The stated reasons involve Amazon's fiscal calendar and capturing back-to-school spending earlier. The practical implication for furniture retailers is a shorter preparation window and a different promotional framing. Historically, more than 100 retailers run competing promotional events during Prime Day because the event generates a broad surge in consumer purchase intent and online traffic, not just on Amazon but across retail broadly. That surge is still happening. It's just happening in June now.
The holiday season kickoff framing that Prime Day traditionally carried doesn't really fit a June event. What fits June is back-to-school and inventory management. Think office furniture, functional living spaces, organizational pieces. And think about the slow-moving product in your stores right now, items that are out of season, overstocked, or underperforming. A June promotional window tied to elevated consumer traffic is a real opportunity to clear that inventory before summer deliveries arrive in July. The challenge is the compressed timeline. Retailers who built their Prime Day strategy around a July event need to rebuild it around June. Partners, influencers, creators, marketplaces are more important than ever when you have less lead time. And for manufacturers, the opportunity is to reach out to retail partners now with turnkey promotional materials that reduce the lift on their end. The vendors who show up with ready-to-deploy assets will earn the placements. Stepping back from all of this, there is a pattern worth naming. Every story this week, tariff refunds, consumer confidence, retail vacancies, Prime Day, rewards the same behavior, moving with intention while everyone else waits. Tariff refunds go to importers who prepared and filed accurately. Real estate opportunities go to operators who recognize the market timing. Prime Day benefits the retailers who rebuild their strategy for June instead of waiting to see what happens. Consumer intent converts to sales for the store operators who reduce friction instead of adding it. The furniture industry has spent a long time building tools to handle hesitation. Financing offers, deferred payment plans, no interest periods. Those tools still work. But the deeper opportunity right now is not a financial one. It's operational and psychological. Getting systems in place, starting conversations earlier, making the buying decision feel like the natural next step rather than a choice the customer has to fully justify to themselves. The appetite is there. The data confirms it. Furniture sits at the top of consumer purchase intent lists. The industry just needs to close the gap between what consumers want and what they actually do. Thanks for listening to Furniture Industry News. If this briefing is useful to you, please subscribe. It helps us keep delivering content like this every week. We'll see you next time.